In the quiet corridors of diplomacy, words can be as powerful as weapons. And sometimes, a single phrase can shake the foundations of an entire military alliance. Behind closed doors, Finland has delivered a stark warning to the United States. Do not call future security promises to Ukraine Article 5-like. The caution appears in a confidential US State Department cable obtained by POLITICO, a document that reveals growing unease among NATO's newest member about how far words should go before commitments become dangerous. Dated January 20, the cable describes a meeting in Helsinki just one day earlier. Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen sat down with US lawmakers Jack Bergman and Sarah Elfrith, both members of the House Armed Services Committee. The message she delivered was clear and blunt. Russia, she said, remains a long-term strategic threat. A weak peace deal for Ukraine, she warned, would only invite future aggression. But then came the line, Finland does not want crossed. Valtonen cautioned against describing any post-war security arrangement for Ukraine as Article 5-like. Even suggesting a comparison, she argued, risks blurring a red line, conflating NATO's ironclad mutual defense clause with looser bilateral promises made outside the alliance. Article 5 is not symbolic, it is the backbone of NATO. An attack on one is an attack on all. In NATO's 75-year history, it has been invoked only once after the September 11th attacks on the United States. Finland wants a firewall. A clear separation between NATO's binding guarantees and whatever security support Ukraine receives before eventual membership. Former NATO officials say the concern runs deeper than semantics. Using the term Article 5, even loosely, could imply NATO involvement where none exists and hand Russia an opportunity to test those promises. If Moscow strikes and the response falters, the credibility of Article 5 itself could be called into question. There are political risks too. Analysts warn that Article 5-like language could fuel domestic opposition in NATO countries already divided over Ukraine, while tempting Russia to probe the limits of Western resolve. All of this unfolds as NATO allies grapple with economic strain, rising defense costs, and lingering uncertainty over President Donald Trump's skepticism toward the alliance. Finland, which joined NATO after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, shares an 830-mile border with Moscow and no illusions. We should not be naive, Valtonen is quoted as saying. Russia, she warned, could emerge empowered if sanctions are lifted. For Finland, the goal is clear. Strong security for Ukraine, a lasting peace, and absolute clarity about what NATO's promises truly mean. Because in geopolitics, over-promising can be just as dangerous.
On the 3rd of February, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte re-emerged in Kyiv. He stated that after the peace agreement in Ukraine, once it is adopted, some troops, weaponry, aviation, and maritime forces will appear from so-called the coalition of the willing. After what we now know about the Western elites from Epstein files, it has a new image now. So these troops will be headed by Great Britain and France. Of course, these are unhidden plans of the foreign military intervention. For us, this is unacceptable. On multiple occasions, Russia said that the deployment of any troops, any Western troops in Ukraine under any flag will be considered as a threat to our national security, and these troops will be considered as a legitimate military target. Let me remind you that this extension of the alliance has become one of the underlying causes of the conflict, and the settlement requires its elimination. Russia will do that using various ways, including military and political methods.
Russia has strongly objected to the deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine, calling it unacceptable. Russia's foreign ministry has warned that the deployed coalition forces would be considered legitimate military targets. Russia's remarks came in response to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte announcing that European allies said they will deploy troops to Ukraine.
The United States, Europe and Canada have affirmed their readiness to provide the assurance that Ukraine needs to be able to forge a peace with Russia. The members of the Coalition of the Willing made encouraging progress on these guarantees when they met last month in Paris. I was at that meeting, and so was President Zelensky. Some European allies have announced that they will deploy troops to Ukraine after a deal is reached. Troops on the ground, jets in the air, ships on the Black Sea. The United States will be the backstop. Others have vowed to support in other ways. The security guarantees are solid. And this is crucial because we know that getting to an agreement to end this terrible war will require difficult choices. Ukraine needs to know with absolute certainty that whatever sacrifices you have made, the lives you have lost, the devastation you have endured, will not be at risk of repetition. You need to know that this peace will be lasting, not because papers have been signed, but because there is hard power to back it up.
Moscow's threat comes amid relentless Russian aerial strikes on Ukraine ahead of U.S.-brokered talks in Abu Dhabi this week. The trilateral talks will take place on Wednesday and Thursday in the UAE capital. U.S. President Donald Trump has over the past year pushed the two sides to find compromises. However, Moscow has continued its attacks on Ukraine despite promising Washington to pause fighting due to winter.
Mr. President, yesterday you were talking about how Vladimir Putin had agreed to a pause during the cold weather. Overnight, those attacks have started up again. Apparently the worst.
It was Sunday to Sunday, and it opened up, and he hit him hard last night. No, he agreed. He kept his word on that. It's a lot. You know, 1 week is, we'll take anything because it's really, really cold over there. But it was on Sunday, and he went from Sunday to Sunday.
Are you disappointed he didn't go further or go
Yeah, I
longer?
would like to. I want him to end the war.